There's a dark side to leadership. And no, I'm not talking about Darth Vader. I'm talking about 5 brutal realities that people in leadership roles face every single day. And if you're a leader, you know all about it. And if you're an aspiring leader, then you need to know all about it, because you might find yourself wanting to stay far, far away from leadership after you hear what I have to say in this episode. On the other hand, if the challenge somehow inspires you, you at least need to go in with your eyes wide open and be ready with some strategies to navigate the dark side of leadership. Now, to be clear, I'm not just going to talk about the bad stuff. Nobody really wants that, right? I'm actually going to share some tips and insights that have personally helped me and may help you as well in your leadership journey. I'm also going to give you some specific resources for each section to provide you with even more value as you try to sort through the realities of leadership. I don't want these realities to keep you from stepping into leadership or to break you down in the middle of your leadership journey. So be sure to stick around until the end. I sort of saved most of the intense ones for last. The last 2 are admittedly the hardest. And I don't hear many people talking about them, but we really need to. We really got to get this out in the open. So let's dive in. I'm going to start with one of the more obvious and universal struggles of leadership. Number 1 is decision fatigue. A study published by the Wall Street Journal estimated that American adults make an average of 35,000 decisions a day. It's an insane amount of decisions. The more decisions you make, the more the connection between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala weakens. And as this happens, your brain starts to look for shortcuts. And these shortcuts are symptoms that you're probably familiar with. They manifest in 4 primary ways: procrastination, impulsivity, avoidance, and indecision. Now, this is how it works for the average American adult. Leaders, however, are different. They're put in an even more tumultuous position because leadership isn't just about making decisions, it's about making the right decisions at the right time. Jeff Bezos of Amazon talks about this all the time. He says that if you're a senior executive, you're not being paid to make thousands of decisions. You're paid to make a small number of really, really high quality decisions. Bezos says that if he makes just 3 decisions a day, that's enough. That's plenty. The higher up in leadership you climb, the higher the quality of your decision making needs to be. In other words, decision fatigue is the enemy of leadership. So what do we do about this? Well, a lot of seasoned leaders have given us some ideas. You may be familiar with some of the decision hacks that leaders like former President Obama or even Facebook co-founder Mark Zuckerberg have shared in the past. For instance, they do some weird things. They'll wear the same outfit every day to remove the daily decision of what to wear, or they'll stick to the same routine every single day to remove daily scheduling decisions. Some leaders will eat the same foods every single day to avoid having to decide what to eat. The goal is to avoid making trivial decisions, to preserve mental energy and decision-making power for the most important ones. Here are a few ways to go about this. First, streamline your decision-making. This would include eliminating unnecessary decisions and automating other decisions. Second, delegate as many decisions as you possibly can. Third, optimize when and how you make decisions so that they're as high quality as they possibly can be. This would include prioritizing sleep quality, nutrition, the timing of your decision making, and all other sorts of variables that affect decision making quality. This is a hard reality of leadership. It takes a lot of discipline to get it consistently right, but you can do it. You can do it, okay? Here's the second reality of leadership. I call this the Michael Scott reality. If you've seen the TV show The Office, then this will make sense to you. Definitely hit that thumbs up button if you're a fellow Office junkie. If you haven't seen it, well, you should just reconsider subscribing to my channel because I just don't know if we're a good fit, you know? In any case, Michael Scott is the boss. And all Michael wants is to love and be loved by his fellow employees, but the employees just view him as a boss. You know, they don't want a personal friendship of any kind. And the dynamic of the show is funny, of course, but the reality of it is actually really sad. It kind of hits home for me a little bit. Sometimes the leader is just the elephant in the room. You know, people may be uncomfortable around you. Maybe they feel like they're walking on eggshells or just can't truly let their hair down around you sometimes. The fact of the matter is that you, as the leader, are an authority figure. This is a reality that impacts the relational dynamics between you and your team. And this is a thing, you just got to own it. There's a certain amount of separation that's just, honestly, it's appropriate and you have to accept it. In a lot of ways, this boils down to just some basic relational boundaries. I'm a firm believer in that. That's so important, particularly in a workplace. You got to have those. However, I'm also very close with my team. Here's how we navigate this within our organization. Okay. I think this has actually been extremely helpful to us. And I hope it kind of opens your eyes to maybe how this could work. We refer to it as the corporate community and cause hats. Of course, I'm not referring to a physical hat, but rather the type of interaction we need to have. I use this all the time. Okay. This is like a secret weapon when it comes to this category. If I have the corporate hat on, then I'm having a conversation with you as an executive about a corporate matter. For instance, if someone comes into your office and you say, hey, this is a corporate conversation, just want to let you know, okay? And you're talking about like an issue with time off. You're talking about an issue with budget, or you're talking about like a very, very corporate thing. Like, hey, I got to have you show up on time. It's just one of our values. I know I got my corporate hat on, but we just got to do that, all right? If I have the community hat on, then I'm having a conversation as a friend or a confidant, or I'm talking about something personal or something social. For instance, we might be talking about what's going on in your personal life. Like, hey, I noticed you were moving. How did the move go? Or, how's everything going with your brother or your sister who's in the hospital? That's like a community hat type conversation. And then there's the cause hat. And this would be really a conversation almost like you're the general or the leader, and you're talking about the mission or the vision or the values. And it's like, okay, hey, I know things are hard right now, but we got to take that hill. We got to get this thing done. This matters. We wear all these hats in life, right? And the problem is that we get them confused. So if I know that I have someone who just got a cancer diagnosis and they're showing up to work, it's probably not the time to put on the corporate hat or the cause hat. I kind of need to put on the community hat first and say, I am so sorry you're going through this. And that's the hat you need to wear. Because conversation can kind of float around all of these hats, I've sort of learned to just incorporate this into dialogue. You might say, hey, I have my corporate hat on, this is what I would say. But, if I had my community hat on with you right now, and I'm just talking to you as a friend, this is what I think. And with my closer relationships that I also work with, this is absolutely essential to keep the health in those relationships. So consider this. This might be something you need to incorporate. In a healthy workplace, we learn to wear all three interchangeably. The way to combat a Michael Scott reality is to get corporate community and cause in the DNA of your culture. This opens the door to building meaningful relationships with your team, even when you're the leader. The third reality is high stakes. When you're just working a job, the stakes are relatively low. You may play an essential part in the system, but you're not ultimately responsible for the outcomes. The leader is. You see, when you enter into a leadership position, the stakes are much higher. You don't have a safety net anymore. You are ultimately responsible for the outcomes. You're not just responsible for yourself anymore. You're responsible for the overarching success or failure. Your ability to lead also directly impacts the ones you're leading. These are people who may have a family they're providing for. Your success as a leader directly impacts their ability to do that. Now, that is a lot of pressure. Assuming you're a decent person who actually cares about the livelihood of your team, you don't want to let them down. You don't want to lead them astray. The stakes are high for you. So can you handle that kind of pressure, that kind of weight? And look, the bigger the thing you lead gets, the higher and higher the stakes get. For many leaders, the pressure just gets too great to handle and they just crack. We've all seen it. We've read the stories. So what do you do about this? One of the best things a leader can do for their team is to maintain their own personal health and wellness. Now, that may sound selfish to you on the surface, but it's actually critical. It's often said, so goes the leader, so goes the team. Or in parenting terms, more is caught than taught. Well, if you let yourself fall into bad habits or destructive patterns or moral failure and all the like, what do you think is going to happen to your team? If you stop learning and growing, what's going to happen? You'll become irrelevant, and so will the team you lead. You see, your personal health and growth are the most important things you can offer your team. So goes the leader, so goes the team. This is one of the best ways to combat the high stakes environment. Instead of rolling over on your belly and surrendering to the pressures of leadership, roll up your sleeves and fight the good fight. You aren't born a great leader. You have to become one. You have to rise to the occasion. You have to be faithful to the growth journey. Yes, the stakes are high. I know that. But your purpose is higher. Rise to it. This brings me to the next leadership reality. This is where things get a little harder and a little heavier. The fourth reality is that leaders attract enemies. Now, I'll be transparent. This is one of those realities that I really struggle with the most. I've been struggling with it more recently. Leadership demands that you forsake what people think of you in order to do what's right. You know, a leader has to make the decisions that nobody else wants to make. A leader has to step in and lead when nobody else will. A leader has to do what others are unwilling to do. And people might think it's nice being the leader until it comes to standing in the gap. That phrase, standing in the gap, actually originates from the Bible, where a breached city wall made the inhabitants vulnerable to attack. To stand in the gap meant a soldier would risk their own life to defend that vulnerable spot and hold back the enemy. That's what a leader does. You stand in the gap. And yeah, you quickly become public enemy number one. Not too long ago, we experienced a global crisis. And if you were in leadership at that time, you know how hard that was. You had to lead through one of the most disillusioning times in recent history. If you sneezed the wrong way, you'd be burned at the stake. There's a reason so many leaders threw in the towel during that time. Leaders attract enemies. You know, I was recently talking with a mentor about this reality, and he mentioned how people rarely show the humility and maturity to look beyond themselves and understand the leader's role in the situation. For instance, when people are let go, their pride just can rarely stomach the notion that they might actually truly be the problem. Instead, they develop a narrative where the leader is the enemy in the situation. This happens all the time. Now, I'm not saying that the leader is always right, but I am saying that more often than not, everyone wants to follow the leader or is fine to follow the leader until it no longer benefits them. They're happy to let the leader stand in the gap as long as it makes things easier for them, but they're just as quick to crucify the leader when things get hard or when they get challenged. I've been a leader long enough to accrue quite a few enemies by standing up for what I believe to be right. I've had to let people go. I've had to make unpopular decisions. I've had to hold people accountable. I've had to be the bearer of bad news. I've had to stand in the gap. That's what a leader does. And I'm sure you've had your own hits and hurts. I'm sure you've had your own list of people that view you as the enemy. And you know, I've just got to say, this reality of leadership is really hard. It's really hard. And I wish I had a solution for you. I wish I had some secret hack or tip that helped. But the truth is, I don't. All I can say is that you need to have thick skin. You need to be able to take some hits and get back up. You need to be resilient in the face of adversity. This leads me to the final reality of leadership. Number 5, leadership is lonely. All of the realities we've discussed culminate in this final reality. Sometimes you just feel alone in your struggles as a leader. You feel like nobody else can quite relate to you. You feel like you carry a weight that other people can't fully understand. You know, I watch the Lord of the Rings trilogy every year. In fact, I've watched and discussed it with my team countless times because it's a masterclass on leadership. It really is. If you know what I'm talking about, please hit that like button to tell everybody to watch it immediately. It's not a nerd thing, guys. It's legit. I've always felt like the entire Fellowship of the Ring represents every leadership style in every leadership season. Gandalf obviously has the great wisdom and guidance of a tenured leader. Sam has the leadership of service and encouragement. Aragorn embodies courageous leadership in its purest form. And I've always felt like Frodo represents the weight of leadership, the burden, the loneliness. Sometimes the burden you carry as a leader makes you feel like you're on the outside of everyone else's experience. You just feel alone. I'll be honest, sometimes I feel like the only person who understands some of what I experience is my father. My father is a great leader. He's been faithful to his pastoral leadership role for over 33 years. He understands the harsh realities of leadership better than anyone. When I talk with him about it, it's like I finally feel seen. Like I finally feel understood. I don't feel lonely anymore. This is one of those reasons why I started this community. I don't want you to feel alone in this. Maybe, just maybe, by being honest about the struggles, the harsh realities of leadership, we can be more resilient. Maybe if we treat each other like fellow soldiers instead of competitors or enemies, we could actually help each other face the realities of leadership. Maybe we could actually help each other bear that burden. If anything we've talked about in this episode resonated with you, would you mind letting us know in the comments? Just share some of the challenges, your hits, your hurts, anything. And consider why you do that, encouraging somebody else in their process and in their journey. You're not alone, all right? If there's someone you know who needs to hear this, would you consider sharing it with them? Leadership has some harsh realities, but let's stay resilient together, okay? If you want a complete list of resources that I've put together, I encourage you to download my free leadership resource guide. It's really helpful with everything we've talked about. It's helped me tremendously. I'll go ahead and link it below. If you're on podcast, you can just go to my website, zachwhite.com. And man, I really hope it serves you. Hey, if this episode served you, you'll probably like this episode right here where I discuss some of the challenges that come with leading from a stage. I share what I've learned from over 18 years of experience on stage in front of thousands of people, and I open up about some of the things that I've struggled with, but have managed to overcome over the years. So check that out. It's a fun conversation. See you over there.